It begins with silence. Not peace, not rest, but the kind of silence that comes after something enormous has ended. You open your eyes to the faint glow of dying embers. The fire has burned low, leaving only the scent of smoke and the memory of warmth. Beyond the window, the world holds its breath. The streets that once echoed with footsteps and laughter now lie empty. Somewhere far away, a bell tolls slow, uncertain, like it too has forgotten what it means to keep time. You step outside. The air tastes of dust and ash. The stones beneath your feet are warm from the fires that burned through the city hours ago. Rome, the eternal city, is no longer eternal. The banners that once fluttered from marble towers hang in tatters. Shadows move between the ruins, not soldiers now, but scavengers. The empire that stretched across continents has fallen not with a roar, but with a whisper. You walk through it quietly, almost afraid to disturb the ghosts that linger. Somewhere, in the half-collapsed forum, a statue of an emperor lies broken. His face, carved once to resemble the gods, stares upward from the ground. One eye is gone, the other catches the faint reflection of the moon. You kneel beside it, brush away a layer of ash. The marble is cold. For a moment, you think you see yourself reflected there, not as you are, but as you might have been, a citizen, a builder, a dreamer, watching the last light of an empire fade away. The wind carries voices, fragments of Latin prayers, the sound of sandals dragging, the cry of a mother calling a name that will never answer. You walk on. Every building tells the same story. Power, pride, and the slow erosion of both. The aqueduct that once carried clear water from the hills now runs dry. The baths are silent, the mosaics crack. The great libraries, once filled with knowledge, now feed the flames that keep refugees warm. You find a small alleyway, narrow and dark, where ivy creeps through broken stone. At its end, a door stands ajar. Inside, a man sits by a candle, writing. He doesn't look up when you enter. He only whispers to himself as his quill scratches over parchment. You catch fragments of his words. Remember, record, preserve. He looks old, not in body, but in spirit. You realize he's not writing for himself. He's writing for you, for those who will come centuries later, wondering what it was like when the world ended. The candle flickers. You step closer and see what he's writing. Names, cities, laws, lives. He's trying to capture a civilization before it dissolves completely into memory. Outside, thunder rolls. The sky glows faintly red, a city burning on the horizon. You ask him softly, "Why do you write when everything is gone?" He smiles faintly, without lifting his eyes. So that something stays. You don't answer. You don't have to. The air between you carries a strange calm, as if the act of remembering is enough to keep the world from disappearing. Hours pass. The candle burns lower. You find yourself sitting beside him, listening to the sound of the quill moving across parchment, the last heartbeat of an empire. When the light finally dies, the room goes dark, but the air feels different, not empty, but alive, filled with echoes, with beginnings disguised as endings. You step outside once more. The night is quiet now. Above the ruins, stars shimmer like scattered embers, each one a memory of something that refused to vanish. You breathe deeply. For the first time, you realize that this is not the end. It's the pause before something new begins. And somewhere in the dark, you can already hear it. The faint ring of hammers, the murmuring of monks, the first heartbeat of the Middle Ages. Fade sound of fire crackling, slow instrumental ambient tone. The morning comes quietly, the kind that doesn't rise, but slowly unveils itself. Mist drifts low across the ruins, curling through the arches like pale smoke. The world smells faintly of rain and stone and old wood. You start walking, not because you know where to go, but because the road still exists. Once, this path was a Roman highway, straight as a ruler, built by engineers who believed that perfection was eternal. Now weeds break through the cracks. The stones have shifted. A fox crosses the path where legions once marched. Every step you take feels like moving through someone else's dream, a dream that's already begun to fade. The silence is strange. No carts, no soldiers, no laughter of merchants or voices of children. Just wind brushing the tall grass that grows between the stones. You pass a milestone, half buried in moss. The numbers carved into it are almost gone, but if you trace your fingers across the stone, you can still feel them, the ghost of order, the measure of distance in a world that no longer measures anything. You wonder who walked this road last, a soldier, a pilgrim, a thief, someone who, like you, followed the stones simply because they led somewhere. A few miles ahead, you find what used to be a market town. The walls are crumbling, the gates half swallowed by ivy. Inside, the square lies open and empty. A broken cart rests on its side, the wood has rotted, the wheels frozen in place. You can still imagine the sound, hooves clattering, people haggling, a baker shouting the price of bread. But now, there's only wind and the faint creak of something metal shifting with time. You walk past a fountain. The basin is dry, but inside it, rainwater has gathered in a shallow pool. You kneel beside it, look down. Your reflection wavers, not just your face, but the face of history itself, rippling in a puddle of forgotten rain. You dip your hand in the water. It's cold. For a moment, you imagine the people who once stood here, washing their hands, laughing, filling their jugs, never imagining that someday, someone like you would stand here trying to remember them. You keep walking. The road narrows, turning from stone to dirt, from dirt to grass. The empire's clean geometry gives way to the wild. Fields reclaim what men once claimed for themselves. On a small rise, you see an arch, the remains of an old triumphal gate. Its carvings are faint but still visible. Soldiers, gods, victories. You reach out to touch the stone. It feels rough, alive with lichen. You realize the arch no longer celebrates conquest. It only frames the sky. Through it, clouds move slowly, heavy with rain. Later, as the sun dips behind gray hills, you come across a traveler's hut, or what's left of one. A few walls, a roof sagging inward. You step inside. It smells of wood and earth. Someone once lived here, a keeper of the road, perhaps. There's an old stool, a pile of straw, and a rusted oil lamp lying on its side. You set the lamp upright, wipe off the dust, and imagine lighting it. The flame that once welcomed strangers is long gone, but somehow the gesture still feels sacred. You sit on the stool, listening. The wind pushes through the cracks in the walls, humming like a distant choir. You close your eyes. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the sound of footsteps, thousands of them, the ghosts of travelers long gone. They pass through the night without speaking. They're not lost. They're just forgotten. At dawn, you leave the hut and continue down the road. The mist has returned, thick and silver, turning everything soft. You walk until the path opens into a valley wide, green, almost untouched. A small village lies ahead, a handful of wooden houses, smoke curling from their chimneys. A woman carrying a bucket stops and looks at you. Her eyes are wary but kind. She nods, then keeps walking. You follow the faint sound of a bell, not the grand toll of a cathedral, but the small, hollow ring of a chapel made of wood and prayer. You find it near the edge of the village, leaning slightly, surrounded by tall grass. Inside, a single candle burns. The air smells of wax and damp earth. You kneel, not to pray, but to rest. Your knees press into the cool ground, and you feel, for the first time, something like peace. Outside, the wind moves softly through the valley. It carries the smell of bread baking, the bleat of distant sheep, and a quiet truth. The empire is gone, but life, small, stubborn, ordinary life, goes on. You stay there until the candle burns low. When you finally rise, you feel lighter, though the road ahead is still long. You step outside. The sky has cleared. A path winds up the hill beyond the village, disappearing into forest and fog. You take it without hesitation. As you walk, you look back one last time. Smoke rises gently from the chimneys. A bell rings again, faint, familiar, for the first time since Rome fell. It doesn't sound like morning. It sounds like morning. Fade to the sound of distant wind and footsteps on gravel. You climb through mist that smells of pine and rain. The path winds upward through an old forest, tall oaks, black firs, dripping moss. The air is cool, thin, and silent except for the sound of your breath. After hours of walking, the trees part, revealing a clearing. There, resting against the mountainside, stands a monastery. It's small, built of gray stone, its walls darkened by centuries of rain. From the highest tower, a single bell hangs motionless, waiting for wind. You stop and listen. All you hear is the drip of water from the eaves, the quiet rustle of robes somewhere beyond the gate. The air carries a faint scent of smoke and wax, the perfume of discipline and devotion. You step closer, push gently on the wooden door. It opens without a sound. Inside, the world is different, cooler, still, the kind of silence that has weight, as if the air itself remembers every prayer ever whispered within these walls. Your footsteps echo faintly on the stone floor. Candles flicker in iron sconces, painting halos of gold on rough gray walls. Somewhere in the distance, a low chant rises and falls, a tide of voices blending into one endless breath. You follow the sound until you reach a narrow hall lined with archways. Beyond each arch, men sit at long wooden tables bent over parchment. The only sounds are the scratching of quills and the soft turning of pages. You stand at the threshold and watch. These are the monks, keepers of the forgotten world. Their faces are calm, their eyes steady. They write slowly as if every word were a seed meant to outlast time. A young monk looks up and sees you. He doesn't speak. He simply nods toward an empty seat beside him. You walk over and sit down. Before you lies a sheet of parchment, pale and empty. Beside it, a pot of ink, thick, dark, smelling faintly of iron and smoke. The monk dips his quill and begins to write. The sound of his strokes is like rain, steady, patient, endless. You lean closer and see what he's copying. A passage in Latin, beautiful and precise. But the words aren't about war or kings. They're about stars, medicine, philosophy. The fragments of a civilization refusing to die quietly. You whisper, "Why do you copy them, when no one will read them now?" The monk doesn't look up. His voice is soft, like the turning of a page, so that someone will read them later. The candlelight trembles. You watch as his hand moves, steady and sure, tracing letters that have survived earthquakes, fires, and forgetfulness. It feels like watching a heartbeat being written onto paper. Around you, the other monks move in rhythm, breathing, dipping, writing, each one a vessel of memory, each one a bridge between what was and what will be. You realize they are not merely copying words. They are preserving a way of seeing the world, a belief that thought, like faith, is worth saving. Hours pass unnoticed. The chant fades. The candles burn lower. Outside, the mountain fog thickens, pressing softly against the windows. You rise and follow another corridor, this one narrower, colder. At its end is a small room, the scriptorium's heart. Here, finished manuscripts are stored, rows upon rows of bound volumes, their spines marked with symbols. You run your hand along them. The leather is cracked but warm. Some are works of poetry, others are maps, medical treatises, letters from distant centuries. You take one at random and open it. The handwriting inside is delicate, careful. A single phrase catches your eye, lux in tenebris, light in darkness. You close the book and hold it to your chest. Outside, the wind sighs through the corridor, sounding almost like breath, as if the monastery itself is alive, inhaling the centuries, exhaling wisdom. Later, you join the monks in their refectory, a long hall lit by candles and the faint glow of a hearth. They eat in silence, bread, broth, a single apple passed down the table. No words are needed. The act of eating together feels like prayer. You taste the bread. It's coarse but good, warm from the oven. As you chew, you notice the sound of the wind outside again, not howling, but whispering. It feels as though the world beyond the monastery walls has grown darker, colder, and yet here, in this pocket of warmth and quiet, the flame still burns. You glance at the young monk across from you. He meets your eyes for a moment, then lowers his head. You understand. He knows the world is falling apart out there. But here, they are holding it together, one letter at a time. Night falls. The chanting resumes, deeper now, slower. You lie in a small cell, the stone cool beneath your back, a single candle flickering beside you. You listen to the rhythm of prayer, the heartbeat of ink, and devotion echoing through the halls. You think of the monk's words, so that someone will read them later. You close your eyes and imagine that someone. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's centuries from now. Maybe it doesn't matter, because as long as the flame burns, as long as ink meets parchment, the world isn't lost. Outside, the wind rises, carrying the sound of the bell, a single note, soft but endless. It rings not for death, but for memory. And as the sound fades into the night, you drift toward sleep, feeling the weight of silence become something sacred. Morning comes with the sound of hammers. Not sharp, not hurried, steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat echoing through wood and stone. You open your eyes to the glow of a forge. Sparks drift through the air like fireflies, each one living and dying in a single breath. The air is warm, thick with the scent of smoke and iron. You've left the mountains behind, the quiet of parchment and prayer, and now you stand in a small village tucked beside a river. The monastery's bells are a memory. Here, the rhythm of the day is kept by the ringing of steel. You walk toward the sound. At the center of the village stands a forge, a simple shelter of wood and thatch, open to the morning air. Inside, a blacksmith works alone. His arms move slowly, deliberately, guiding the metal through fire and water. Every strike of his hammer feels like punctuation, the world being rewritten, one spark at a time. He doesn't see you at first. You stand in the doorway watching. The firelight paints the walls in shifting gold and red, and his shadow moves like a living thing. Finally he speaks, his voice low, roughened by years of smoke. Come closer. You'll see it better when it breathes. You step beside him. On the anvil lies a half-formed blade, glowing orange in the dim light. He lifts it with tongs, dips it into a trough of water. The hiss is sharp, alive, the sound of heat meeting resistance. Steam rises, curling like ghosts toward the rafters. He smiles slightly. That's its first breath. You nod, though you don't quite understand. He gestures for you to watch again. He sets the iron back into the coals. The fire answers with a roar, hungry, eager. This, he says, is how we begin again. The monks keep the words. We keep the world. You stay with him through the morning. He works without haste, but without rest. Hammer, turn, breathe, quench, a rhythm older than memory. Between strikes, he hums softly, not a song you recognize, but one that feels familiar. It's the same melody as the bell you heard at the monastery, only heavier, grounded. He tells you stories as he works, of travelers who bring broken plowshares, of farmers who trade bread for nails, of soldiers who come with swords bent by anger and leave with tools shaped for peace. You see, he says, iron doesn't care what you make of it. A sword or a spade, it only learns from your hand. You watch the sparks rise again, each one a star that lives for less than a second. It reminds you of Rome, all those monuments and triumphs, now dust. But this rhythm, this work, feels eternal. At midday, he sets down his hammer and wipes the sweat from his brow. The forge quiets. Outside, the village hums softly, the creak of carts, the bark of dogs, the laughter of children near the river. Life ordinary and unremarkable, but alive. He pours you a drink, water, warm and metallic from the bucket. You sit on a low bench near the doorway. From here, you can see the entire village. Rooftops of straw, fields of barley bending in the breeze, smoke curling from kitchen fires. It's not an empire. It's not a kingdom, but it's enough. You realize that while the world above burns and fades, this, the craft, the rhythm, the work of hands, is what truly survives. Later, as evening falls, he begins again. This time, he lets you help. He shows you how to hold the tongs, how to read the color of the metal. Orange is breath, he says. White is pain. Blue is memory. You raise the hammer. It's heavier than you expected. The first strike misses the mark, ringing awkwardly. He laughs softly. No one strikes true the first time. Even gods must learn rhythm. He guides your hands. Together, you shake the metal slow, steady. Each blow sends a tremor up your arm, through your chest, into your heart. You feel it there, deep and ancient. The song of work, the hymn of endurance. For a while, you forget that centuries are passing. The world outside these walls could be falling apart, and you wouldn't know. All that exists is heat, breath, motion, sound. When the blade is finished, he lays it gently on the anvil. It gleams faintly, simple, sturdy, without ornament. He looks at you and says, a tool or a weapon, it depends on who holds it. Then he smiles, the kind of smile that carries both sorrow and pride. That's true of everything, I suppose. He sets the blade aside and begins to bank the fire. The forge dims, the air cooling around you. Outside, dusk settles over the fields like a soft blanket. You hear the bell from the monastery again, faint and far away. It sounds almost like the hammer, slower now, gentler, as if the world itself has learned to breathe again. Before you leave, the blacksmith hands you a small piece of metal, a scrap, nothing more. It's yours now, he says, a reminder that even in darkness, there's work to be done. You hold it in your palm. It's still warm. You can feel the faint pulse of the fire that shaped it, not gone, just sleeping. You step outside. The sky is deep blue, fading toward night. A single star glimmers above the forge, bright and steady. You breathe the cool air and realize that every sound you hear, the crackle of coals, the whisper of wind, the sigh of river reeds, belongs to a new kind of music, a quiet song born not from glory, but from survival. The blacksmith calls it the song of the living. You call it hope. You wake to birdsong, not the song of cages or courts, but the raw, trembling call of small things finding warmth after night. Dew lies thick upon the grass, and the sky glows pale, the color of milk before sunrise. You stretch and feel the stiffness in your limbs, the ache of honest labor. The forge's rhythm from yesterday still echoes faintly in your chest, like the memory of a heartbeat that doesn't belong only to you. Outside, the village is already stirring. You hear the creak of wagon wheels, the snort of oxen, the shuffle of feet on damp earth. Wooden doors open one by one, releasing smells of smoke, bread, and sleep. A woman walks past carrying a basket of grain. A boy trails behind her barefoot, dragging a stick through the mud. They nod to you but do not speak. Morning is too sacred for words. You wander toward the fields. Mist clings to the furrows, thin as breath. Somewhere ahead, a rooster calls, bold and certain, as if announcing the dawn himself. Men are already at work. One sharpens a scythe on a whetstone, another turns the soil with a wooden plow. Their movements are slow, sure, and full of purpose. Every gesture feels older than memory. You stop beside an old man repairing a wheel. His hands are cracked, dark with age and dirt, but steady. He glances up and smiles with only his eyes. No empire here, he says softly, just hunger and hope. You nod. It seems a fair trade. At the edge of the field, a small cottage smokes gently from its roof. A woman inside hums a tune, slow and steady, the kind of melody that keeps time better than any clock. She pulls the bread from the oven with calloused hands, then breaks it apart to cool. The sound of crust cracking fills the room, warm as laughter. She offers you a piece. You bite into it. It tastes of smoke, salt, and sunlight, simple things, stitched together by patience. Outside, the child chases a chicken, giggling wildly until he falls into the mud. His mother shakes her head but smiles all the same. You sit there for a while, eating slowly, watching light spill through the doorway. Every minute feels like the world relearning how to breathe. Later, you follow a narrow path down to the river. The water moves lazily, carrying reeds and reflections. A fisherman stands knee-deep, his net shimmering with droplets. He casts, waits, pulls, each motion calm, unhurried. He glances at you and says, "The river's been here longer than kings. It feeds us all the same." You crouch beside the bank and touch the water. It's cold, alive, clean. You wonder how many empires have watched this same river and called it their own. None of them could keep it. The river belongs only to those who wake early enough to greet it. As the sun climbs higher, the village comes alive. Children gather on a storyteller by the well. His voice rises and falls like the tide, weaving tales of saints and dragons, of winters survived and harvests remembered. No one corrects him. Truth is less important than the warmth it leaves behind. You notice the blacksmith from yesterday among the listeners, his hands still marked with soot. He catches your eye, nods once, and smiles faintly. Even he whose life is bound to fire and iron pauses to listen to stories made of air. A bell rings from the chapel at the hill's edge. The sound is soft but sure, calling not for prayer, but for gratitude. The villagers cross themselves, bow their heads for a moment, and then return to work. You climb the hill. The chapel is small, built from river stones and timber. Inside, light pours through a single stained glass window, the saint holding a sheaf of wheat. The colors ripple over the floor, turning dust into gold. You sit in the back pew. There are no words, no priest, no ceremony, just stillness. For a moment, you feel something rise inside you, not faith exactly, but quiet understanding. This is how the world endures, not through conquest or law, but through small acts done faithfully, day after day. You close your eyes. Outside, the fields shimmer in sunlight, and the sound of life drifts upward, the rhythm of tools, the murmur of voices, the beating heart of simplicity. You whisper to yourself, the empire is gone, but the earth remains. And for the first time, you believe it. Evening finds you back by the forge. The blacksmith waves as you pass, his hammer striking slow, sure notes. Children chase fireflies. The smell of soup and smoke fills the air. You realize that survival isn't loud. It doesn't march or shout. It hums softly, like a song passed from one generation to the next. The peasants call it living. You call it peace. You walk for days across low, rolling hills. The air grows cooler with each sunrise. The fields thin, the villages fade, until one morning, you see it, a mountain of stone rising from the mist. It isn't a mountain at all. It's a fortress being born. At first, you only see the scaffolding, a tangle of wooden beams clinging to a half-built wall, ropes like veins running up and down its sides. Men swarm over it like ants, carrying buckets, chisels, hammers. The sound of work fills the valley, a deep, slow rhythm, older than war, older than words. You stand at the edge of the site, watching. Each thud, each scrape, feels like the earth itself is breathing again after centuries of sleep. A foreman notices you. His face is hard, his beard dusted with lime and sweat, looking for work. He asks. You nod. He gestures toward the pile of stones. Then start by lifting. The world's built that way. You do as he says. The stones are heavy, rough, unyielding. They bite into your palms, draw blood before you've carried 3. No one notices. Everyone bleeds here. A mason works nearby, humming a tune to keep his rhythm. Tap, chip, turn. Each motion is small, precise, patient, the opposite of battle. You ask him what he's building. He shrugs. A wam, a dream, a place that might last. The day passes slowly. The sun climbs, burns, and sinks again. When the horn sounds, the workers set down their tools. The valley exhales. You follow them to the camp, rows of tents, fires crackling, voices murmuring. Men eat stew from wooden bowls, women sew torn sleeves, children chase each other between wagons. It feels less like an army, more like a family made of calloused hands. The mason you work beside sits beside you, tearing bread in half. He offers you a piece. You learn quick, he says. Most don't last past noon. You smile faintly. I thought I was building a wall. You say. He shakes his head. You're building time. That night, you lie awake beneath the stars. The camp hums with soft snores, and the half-built castle glows faintly in moonlight. You wonder who it's for, a king, a god, or no one at all. A voice drifts from nearby, low and steady. The Lord said to build it high enough to touch heaven. But heaven's just a place men imagine to justify height. You turn and see an old architect sitting by the fire. His hands tremble as he sketches in the dirt with a stick, arches, towers, buttresses. He looks up at you and smiles. Every stone is a prayer, he says, but not every prayer is heard. You sit with him in silence, watching sparks rise into the dark. He draws a dome perfect and round. You see this, he whispers. It won't be finished in my lifetime. Maybe not in yours. But we start anyway. That's what makes us human. Morning comes gray and cold. You wake to the sound of chisels. The valley echoes again, a clink, thud, shout, creak. The castle grows another inch. You join the masons, lifting, cutting, stacking. Hours blur into rhythm. Your shoulders ache, your hands crack. But something in you hardens too, a quiet endurance that feels almost like faith. At midday, a priest walks among the workers, sprinkling water from a silver bowl. He murmurs blessings in Latin you don't understand. One mason whispers, "The stones don't need blessing. The men do." You smile. You believe him. By afternoon, clouds gather. Thunder rolls like the voice of an impatient god. Rain begins to fall, not gentle, but sharp and heavy. The workers keep going. The mortar runs slick, ropes grow heavy. But no one stops. You look up through the downpour. The half-built tower pierces the storm, a broken finger reaching toward light. For a moment, lightning strikes beyond it, carving the sky white, and you see what it will become. Not a weapon, not a fortress, a memory made of stone. You understand now why the architect smiled. He wasn't drawing a building. He was drawing belief. Night returns. The rain has stopped. Fires glow in the camp again, their smoke twisting into the stars. Someone plays a lute, slow and mournful, but beautiful. You close your eyes and imagine the castle finished, walls smooth, banners rippling in the wind, the world quiet beneath its shadow. Then you imagine centuries passing. The stones darken, vines creep, kings die, and still the towers stand. You realize the truth. They were never building for themselves. They were building for you. The old architect finds you again. He sits beside you, his cloak damp from the rain. You've carried well, he says softly. Tomorrow you'll help with the gate. That's where it begins and ends. You ask him what he means. He stares into the fire. Every life is a gate. You build it strong so others can walk through. The wind shifts. Ashes lift into the night. You watch the flames dance. And for the first time, you feel no fear of tomorrow, only the steady pulse of work, of hands and hearts shaping something that will outlast them all. When dawn breaks again, the valley hums with life. The castle walls gleam wet in the morning sun. The air smells of lime, wood, and possibility. You lift another stone. Your muscles protest, but you smile anyway. The sound of the hammer, the crack of the chisel, the whisper of the wind through scaffold ropes, it all blends into a single rhythm, a song of making, a hymn of patience, and somewhere far above, in a place no hand can reach, the first ray of sunlight catches the unfinished tower. It glows for just a moment, gold on gray, before fading back into the sky. But that moment is enough. The builders pause, look up, and breathe. You breathe with them. For now the work continues. And that, too, is faith. You smell the smoke before you see the town. It carries a sweetness that doesn't belong to wood, a scent the wind refuses to forget. You've walked for days, following the river through lowlands that once held laughter and song. Now, silence grows thicker than fog. The fields are empty, the roads deserted. Only crows keep watch from the fence posts, black and still as carved stone. When you reach the gate, no one stops you. The doors hang open, swinging slowly in the wind. A sign hangs crooked from one nail, its letters faded but still legible. God have mercy. You step through. The street is quiet. Windows shuttered, doors barred. Somewhere, a bell tolls once, twice, then no more. The sound dies like a breath that doesn't return. You keep walking. The market square is empty, but the traces remain. A fallen basket of apples, a child's shoe, a broom left leaning against a wall. The air hums faintly with flies. You don't look too closely. A voice breaks the stillness. Stay back. You turn and see a man standing in the shadow of a doorway. He wears a long dark robe, a mask shaped like a bird's beak. A plague doctor. Are you sick? He asks. You shake your head. Then pray you stay that way. He moves toward a cart covered with a sheet. You know what lies beneath without seeing. He whispers something you can't hear, a prayer, a name, maybe both, then drags the cart away, the wheels creaking on the cobblestone. By evening, you find shelter in a small chapel on the edge of town. Its doors are open, its pews empty. Candles burn low along the altar, their flames trembling as if afraid. You sit and listen. There is no priest, no choir, only the whisper of wax melting and the soft crackle of fire. On the floor, before the altar, lies a single book, its pages yellowed and curled. You kneel and open it. The words are half faded, but one line stands clear. Even in darkness, the soul remembers light. You close the book gently. Outside, the bell tolls again. This time, it sounds less like mourning and more like mercy. Days pass. You wander through villages where every door tells a story. Some have symbols painted in ash, crosses, circles, or strange marks you don't understand. Others are untouched, as if time itself refused to enter. In one town, you meet a woman drawing water from a well. Her hands shake. Her eyes are hollow, but she smiles when she sees you. You're not from here, she says. You nod, then leave while you can. You ask her why she stays. She looks toward the hills. My husband's buried there. Someone has to remember. She hands you a cup of water. It tastes clean, cold, a small miracle in a dying world. That night, you camp by the river again. Mist curls along the surface, soft and white. The moon glows faintly behind clouds, its light gentle, almost kind. You think of the blacksmith, the peasants, the builders, all those who shaped and carried life forward without knowing what waited ahead. You wonder if the plague will erase everything they built, or if somehow, in ways you can't yet see, it will teach the living how to love what remains. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. The sound isn't frightening. It's lonely. It belongs here. You close your eyes, listening to the rhythm of water, wind, and breath. It's slower now, like the world learning how to pause. At dawn, you enter another village. This one is not empty. Smoke rises from chimneys, faint but real. A few figures move through the streets, masked, cautious, quiet. In the square, you see a group of monks in gray robes distributing bread. Each loaf is wrapped in cloth, blessed with a murmured prayer. They work without fear, though death walks beside them. When one coughs, the others simply bow their heads and keep serving. You join them. You hand out bread, water, herbs. No one speaks of hope, but it lives here anyway in every shared glance, every trembling hand that reaches for another. A child takes your hand and whispers, "Are we going to be okay?" You don't answer. You simply hold his hand a moment longer than needed. Sometimes silence is the only honest prayer. By the seventh day, you begin to notice something strange. Flowers blooming where bodies once lay. Tiny white blossoms pushing through the cracks in the cobblestone, feeding on sorrow and sun alike. The villagers don't step on them. They walk around, careful, reverent. Someone says the flowers have no name. Someone else calls them mercy's bloom. You kneel and touch one. The petals are cool, smooth, fragile, yet alive. You realize this is what survival looks like. Delicate, defiant, quiet. Weeks pass. The plague still lingers, but so does life. The bells ring again, not for death, but for evening prayer. Children's voices return, hesitant at first, then brighter. Windows open, markets breathe, and in every gesture, every broom sweeping dust, every loaf baked, every song hummed in the dark, the world remembers how to begin again. You stay until the first frost. Then, one morning, you wake to the smell of clean air, sharp, cold, new. The plague has not ended, but the people have learned to live beside it. As you leave the town, the plague doctor finds you once more. He no longer wears his mask. His face is pale, tired, but his eyes are kind. You made it, he says. So did you answer. He smiles faintly. Not for long, but long enough. You walk together until the road splits. Before you part, he hands you a small vial filled with herbs. For luck, he says, or for remembering. You tuck it into your coat and keep walking. The wind shifts, carrying the faint scent of smoke, bread, and blossoms. Somewhere far behind you, a bell rings again. This time, it doesn't sound like mourning or mercy. It sounds like forgiveness. You return to the same valley months later. The air smells different now, cleaner, almost sweet. The fields that once held silence now hum with faint voices, distant laughter, the rhythm of tools against soil. You realize the world has begun to remember itself. The bells are ringing again. Not for mourning this time, but for morning. Their sound rolls over the hills low, warm, forgiving. Each note feels like a breath released after holding too long. You follow the sound toward a cluster of cottages built from stone and thatch. Between them stands a small wooden chapel, its roof new, its walls still pale from the fresh cut of the wood. Smoke rises from the chimney beside it. You step inside. It's quiet, but not empty. A woman kneels by a bed near the window, pressing a cloth to a child's forehead. The child stirs eyes, and then sleeps again. She looks up when you enter, her eyes tired but kind. You're late, she says softly, as if she's been expecting you. Help me with the water. You don't ask who she is. You simply do as she says. Outside, a small stream runs through the meadow, lined with mint and lavender. You fill a pail and carry it back, the handle biting into your palms. She pours the water into a basin, drops in herbs, and begins to wash her hands. Were you a healer before, you ask? She shakes her head. No one was, until we had to be. Her hands move gently, carefully, as if every motion is a promise. She wipes the child's face, hums a tune you've never heard before, and says quietly, people think healing is about saving. It isn't. It's about staying. As days pass, you help her in silence. You grind herbs, fetch bandages, boil water. The sick come and go. Some recover, some don't. She never stops moving. Even when her voice fades, her hands keep working. At night, when the lamps are dim, she sits by the door, watching the stars. They used to ring the bells for the dead, she says. Now I ring them to remind the living they still have hearts. You look toward the small bell tower outside. Its rope sways gently in the breeze, the sound soft and distant. You ask, who hears it? Anyone who needs to, she replies. One morning, a group of travelers arrives, monks in brown robes carrying satchels filled with herbs and parchment. They bow when they see her. We've heard of your work, one says. She laughs quietly. Then you've heard too much. They set up tables in the courtyard, sorting jars, grinding powders. The air fills with scents of rosemary, smoke, and earth. Someone begins to sing, low, wordless, steady. It isn't a song of prayer or joy. It's a song of persistence. You find yourself humming along without knowing the tune. The woman looks over and smiles. That's how healing spreads, she says. Not through medicine, through memory. Days blend together. The chapel becomes a sanctuary again, not for faith, but for kindness. People bring what they have, grain, cloth, stories. The monks copy remedies onto scraps of parchment, passing them along like sacred texts. A boy enters one afternoon carrying a bird with a broken wing. He says nothing, just holds it out. The woman takes it gently, wraps it in cloth, sets it near the fire. Will it fly again? The boy asks. Maybe, she says. But even if it doesn't, it still sings. That night, you hear the bird's faint chirp in the dark. It sounds fragile, but alive. You realize that's what survival really is, not strength, not defiance, just the courage to keep singing in silence. The next morning, mist hangs over the valley. The bells ring again, slow and steady. You climb the hill to pull the rope yourself. The sound spreads out in waves, echoing through the air until it's no longer yours. The healer stands below, smiling faintly. Do you know what the bells say? She asks. You shake your head. They say, you are still here. You let the words settle inside you. They feel like truth. Weeks pass. The healer grows thinner. Her cough deepens, but she hides it behind her smile. One evening, you find her sitting by the river, watching the reflection of the chapel lights ripple across the water. I won't see next spring, she says softly. You start to speak, but she raises a hand. Don't be sad. I've already had more springs than I expected. She dips her hand into the river, scoops up water, and lets it fall through her fingers. Every drop returns, she whispers. So will I. When she dies, the bells ring for her. You ring them yourself? Not loud, just enough for the valley to remember. The monks bury her beneath a willow tree by the water. The child she once saved leaves a small flower on her grave. No one cries. They just stand in silence, listening to the wind. And then, faintly, as if from the edge of the world, another bell answers. From another village, another healer, another heart. You realize she was right. Healing spreads through memory. You stay for a while longer, keeping the chapel as she did. People still come, still bring offerings, still leave lighter than they arrived. Some pray, some simply rest. All of them listen to the bells. When the time comes for you to leave, the monks give you a small bundle of herbs, a loaf of bread, and a piece of cloth embroidered with a single word, Pax, peace. You tie it around your wrist and walk down the valley road. The bells ring behind you one last time. Their sound fades, but not completely. You can still hear them in your chest, soft, steady, like a heartbeat that isn't only your own. The world feels wider now. Fields of gold stretch toward the horizon. Villages smoke gently in the distance. Somewhere, laughter breaks through wind. Somewhere else a bell answers. You breathe deeply. The air is full of warmth, not from fire, but from life finding its rhythm again. You realize that even in ruin, even after plague and grief, the world has found its voice once more. And this time, it isn't shouting, it's whispering. You wake to the sound of footsteps on gravel. For a moment, you don't know where you are. Then the smell of dew and ash brings it back. The healer's valley, the chapel, the bells. The world feels changed, softer, as though it's exhaled after holding its breath for a century. You pack what little you have, bread wrapped in cloth, a flask of water, and the embroidered strip that still reads Pax. The road stretches before you, a thin gray ribbon through fields the color of gold dust. The air hums faintly with morning light. You don't know where you're going. You only know you have to walk. The first miles pass in silence. You hear your own breath, your own boots, the creak of leather straps. Birds call from the trees, their songs thin but bright. Every so often the road forks, but somehow you always choose the path that feels most like remembering. At midday, you stop by a milestone, a weathered slab carved with symbols long forgotten. Someone has left a sprig of thyme at its base. You touch it gently. It smells of the earth and of hands that still believe in small offerings. You eat a little bread, drink water that tastes of stone and sky, and keep walking. As evening approaches, you reach a hill overlooking a ruined town. Smoke curls faintly from a handful of chimneys, but most roofs are collapsed. The air carries the scent of metal old, rusted, patient. You descend slowly. The streets are lined with statues eroded beyond faces, fountains filled with leaves, and walls covered in ivy that glows green in the twilight. In the square, a woman tends a small fire. She looks up as you pass. "Pilgrim," she asks. You nod, then rest. The road is long. She offers you soup made from lentils and wild garlic. It's simple, but warm. You sit together without speaking, the fire painting her face in shades of amber and shadow. After a while, she says, "My son left for the sea. Said he heard the world was changing there, that ships can cross oceans now. I don't know if I believe him." You stare into the fire. Change always sounds like rumor. You say softly. She smiles. Maybe that's how it begins. You sleep by the fire and dream of waves against stone. When you wake, dawn has painted the horizon pink and gold. The woman is gone. Only her footprints remain in the dust. You follow them for a while until they fade into the road, then keep walking. By the third day, the landscape widens. The road curves along cliffs overlooking a valley where a river winds like silver thread. You pass shepherds, travelers, and merchants leading mules loaded with cloth and salt. They greet you with nods, their eyes tired but gentle. One traveler, an old man in a blue cloak, walks beside you for a while. He carries a staff carved with spirals. "Where are you headed?" he asks. "Wherever the road leads." He chuckles. "Then you're a true pilgrim." He tells you stories of cathedrals being rebuilt, of scholars gathering in distant cities to read old texts aloud, of a world learning how to think again. You listen in silence, letting his words blend with the rhythm of your steps. When the sun sets, he parts ways at a crossroads. "Every road is holy," he says before disappearing into the dusk. You watch until the blue of his cloak fades into shadow. That night, you find shelter beneath an archway. The stone is cool, smooth, carved with words so worn they look like veins in the wall. You trace them with your fingers, whispering sounds that once were prayers. The wind moves through the arch like breath. You close your eyes and imagine all those who walked here before you, peasants, monks, knights, widows, each carrying their small, stubborn hope through centuries of dust. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls. It sounds different now, lighter, freer, less afraid. Days become indistinguishable from one another. Sunrise, road, footsteps, bread, silence. You lose count of miles, of time, of names. But the world around you grows brighter. Fields bloom again, rivers run clear, and children play near bridges that no longer crumble. You pass a group of pilgrims singing as they walk. Their voices are rough but steady. One of them carries a small wooden cross on his back. Another holds a jar of herbs like an offering. They invite you to walk with them. You do. The road feels lighter when shared. At night, you all sleep under the same stars, your breaths rising in unison like smoke from a single fire. One evening, a young pilgrim asks you, "Do you think the world will ever be safe again?" You stare at the stars before answering. "Safety is an illusion," you say, "but peace is something you can build." The group falls silent after that, each of you thinking about the weight of your own footsteps. Weeks later, the road leads you to a great plain where the wind never stops moving. Grasses bow like worshippers. In the distance stands a small stone tower, its roof broken, its walls gray and soft with moss. Inside you find shelves filled with books, scrolls, and jars of ink. Dust covers everything. You open one book carefully. Its pages are filled with drawings, stars, plants, circles within circles. In the margin a note reads, "Knowledge is a seed, keep it dry, and it will live forever." You sit by the window for hours, reading by the light that filters through broken glass. Each word feels like a spark pulled from darkness. When you leave, you take nothing with you. You don't need to. The words are already inside you now. By the time you reach the coast, the world feels open again. Waves crash against black rocks, spraying salt into the air. Boats creak in the harbor, their sails patched and proud. Men shout, ropes tighten, gulls cry overhead. You stand at the edge of the water, letting the cold wind sting your face. The sea smells of life, sharp, clean, endless. Somewhere beyond that horizon lies everything the world has yet to remember. You realize your pilgrimage was never about reaching a place. It was about becoming one. A bell rings behind you, the same tone, the same rhythm, echoing across miles. You turn and see a small chapel on the cliff, its door open to the sea. Inside, candles flicker against walls carved with names of those who never returned. You kneel, not to pray, but to listen. The air hums faintly with centuries of footsteps, voices, and songs. The wind moves through the open door like a sigh of gratitude. When you rise, you leave your walking stick by the altar. You won't need it anymore. Your road is finished. You step outside. The sun is setting, gold melting into blue. The horizon blurs between sky and sea until you can't tell one from the other. You breathe, and for the first time, you realize the world isn't quiet anymore. It's alive. You listen to the bells, to the wind, to your own heartbeat, steady and soft. Everything sounds like one thing now. A song called Continuing. You wake with the sea still murmuring behind you. The air is cool, faintly salted, and the light feels different. It's softer, warmer, as though the sun has learned patience after so many centuries of fire. The morning carries the sound of distant bells, not for war nor worship, but simply to mark the passing of another peaceful hour. You stand, stretch, and look east. The road you walked for months has faded into mist. You realize it doesn't matter anymore. You are no longer traveling through the world. You are simply within it. The village near the coast is awake. Children run barefoot along the path, chasing hens and laughter. A blacksmith's hammer rings faintly from a small forge, steady, rhythmic, reassuring. Smoke rises from ovens baking bread. The air smells of wheat, of salt, of life. You walk slowly through it all unnoticed, as though the world itself has accepted your quietness. A group of students sits outside an abbey wall, listening to a gray-haired monk recite words from a heavy book. You stop, listening to. He reads softly. The earth is round, they say, and in that thought, God is endless. The students nod, whispering to each other, curious, awake, alive with questions. You feel something stir in your chest. It's small, like the first spark of dawn. The world is beginning to wonder again. Further down the road, you find a painter sitting beneath an olive tree. His hands are stained with color, ochre, vermilion, blue as twilight. He hums to himself as he mixes pigment in a bowl made from clay. When he sees you, he smiles. I'm trying to catch the light, he says, gesturing toward the hills. But it keeps changing. You sit beside him. The sky is a slow explosion of gold and rose, clouds drifting like sails. He dips his brush, draws a line, pauses. Maybe it isn't meant to be caught, you say. He laughs softly. Then maybe it's meant to be followed. He gives you a scrap of parchment, a small sketch, unfinished, a horizon, a few strokes of light, a suggestion of mountains. You take it carefully. It feels like holding a sunrise that hasn't happened yet. As the day unfolds, you walk further inland. The roads are busier now, merchants, pilgrims, farmers returning from fields. You hear talk of new inventions, machines that spin thread, lenses that make stars larger, ink that lasts longer on parchment. The world is shifting, not with war this time, but with curiosity. At a crossroads, a young woman sells maps, each one drawn by hand, rivers like veins, mountains like the wrinkles of old skin. She says she's never left her town. All I do is draw where others have gone, she says, and sometimes that feels like traveling too. You buy one not to use, but to remember. The map shows everything you've already passed. Forests, valleys, rivers, and at the far edge an empty space labeled Mare Incognitum, the unknown sea. You fold it gently and slip it into your coat. That evening, you reach a monastery built atop a cliff. Its stones are old, but its windows are filled with glass that catches the last light of the day like jewels. You climb the steps slowly, hearing the ocean sigh far below. Inside, monks chant in low voices, not the stern, fearful tones of old, but something gentler, almost human. They light candles, hundreds of them, until the hall glows like the inside of a sunrise. You find a seat near the back and close your eyes. The chanting rises and falls like waves. You don't pray, you listen, and in the listening, you understand. This is what the Middle Ages were always leading to, not an ending, but a quiet remembering. Not the fall of empires, but the return of breath. When the chanting fades, a young monk sits beside you. He doesn't speak for a while. Then he says, "Do you hear it too?" You tilt your head. The silence. He smiles. "No, the world learning to begin again." He points toward the far end of the hall, where an open door leads to a balcony. You step outside. Below, the sea stretches endlessly, silver in the fading light. Birds spiral in the distance, their wings catching the sun's last gold. You rest your hands on the cool stone railing and watch the horizon blur between day and night. "It's beautiful," you whisper. "It's fragile," he replies. Then softer, "That's what makes it worth saving." You stay until nightfall. The stars appear one by one, bright and ancient, as though the sky itself remembers every pilgrim, every healer, every nameless builder who ever looked up and wondered. You realize the stars haven't changed, only the eyes that see them have. From below, the waves crash softly against the rocks. The wind moves through the arches, carrying the scent of candles and salt. You think of the blacksmith's hammer, the healer's bell, the pilgrim's road, the painter's brush, all of them small notes in a single song. A song of survival, of becoming. You whisper, "The world is breathing again." And the sea, as if an answer, exhales. Later, as you descend from the monastery, the moon rises. Its light spills over the fields, over the river, over the road you've walked for so long. Every stone, every blade of grass glows faintly silver. You stop at the foot of the hill and turn back one last time. The monastery stands like a lantern in the dark, a beacon for whoever will walk after you. You bow your head, not in worship, but in gratitude. You walk until the road disappears into fog. The world is quiet now, but not empty. Somewhere, a forge still glows. Somewhere, a healer still whispers. Somewhere, a bell still rings. The Middle Ages have ended, not with a roar, but with a sigh. And from that sigh, the world will wake again. You breathe in deeply. The air tastes new. You feel the pulse of the earth beneath your feet, slow and steady. The last light of the Middle Ages falls not upon kings or castles, but upon you, a traveler, a listener, a keeper of small truths. You close your eyes and let it fall across your face, warm, forgiving, endless.